Well, I just wanted to tell all of you a few things that have come up because I want to make sure you understand that what Trump is doing, only the tariffs, as I said in the last talk, will take 2 months. As we see, for instance, China just raised theirs to 101% tariff, and so Trump just raised ours to 87% tariff on them, and the net outcome is a reduction for us still. And that's not going to work anyway. Because basically what he's going to say is either you go to zero like all the other countries that I'm working with, unless he wants to get something out of them, and then he may still allow them to have a very small tariff. But it's all going to go to 0-0 because anything else is simply theft. And it's been theft. It's always been theft. And everyone knows it that's in Washington, D.C. I mean, anyone with a brain. Now, there are AOCs there who don't even know where Washington, D.C. is. And there's a bunch of idiots there. And also remember, the most despicable people in America are politicians on both sides. That's just a fact. Look at their lives. And so what we have here is that in 2 days, the stock market bounced back. Now, as I just got through ranting and raving yesterday, I think it was, $11 trillion cannot drop from the stock market without us knowing exactly who did that. And since we don't know, and since I challenge you to find a single person who decided to dump their 401ks, their stock, plus they can't just dump their 401ks, they have to go through their broker. And remember, high-speed traders rule the market. None of us with our 401ks on the market have anything to do with the market. It has to do with the lies given out by the U.S. Federal Reserve about the statistics that affect America, and then supposedly and subsequently then affects corporations. Complete and absolute nonsense. Has nothing to do with the corporations' money that they're making. And so stocks don't go up because companies make more money. They go up because people are buying them and they are raising the price. For what? Not because the company's doing any better. It's the false ceiling that they place on these. It's just like Bitcoin. When they placed a false ceiling on Bitcoin, well, that was the propaganda that led all of us to believe that it was okay that something worth absolutely nothing is worth tens of thousands of dollars, which it is not. And I did a calculation the other day. You know how much money has been stolen from Bitcoin so far? About $200 billion. Now, no one wants to talk about that. One single clearinghouse would come up missing in a day $20 billion. And you're going, but wait a second, how can that be? Because it's a CIA ripoff. And remember, they're very desperate now because Judge Boasberg, who tried or all the judges who tried to say that Trump couldn't get rid of the illegals attacking America, who in almost, I'd say, certainly 75% of the cases, these are people who are locked up. They're locked up for multiple murders, and those are the only red states that kept them locked up. The blue states released them to go murder some more. So as far as I can tell, the attack on America is being led by, at this moment, by liberal Democrats who are being paid to go out and resist Trump. $7,800. They put out advertisements in all the cities that they had these supposed peaceful rallies. No, those weren't peaceful rallies. The only reason that they didn't have the violence that always came, for instance, with Trump's resistance against Trump in the first administration called the Pussy Hat March. Do you know how many people were harmed during that? Every person who didn't have a pussy hat on got beat up. It was a riot. It was an insurrection. And so now we have it again. It's just that they don't have Antifa and Black Lives Matter and the CIA. Those were the provocateurs. Don't forget that. They were paid much, much more money than that, as we saw from the head of BLM, Black Lives Matter. She had 3 houses worth multi-millions of dollars. She stole all the money. She didn't do anything. And then the people who were coming out to support this, they didn't even know what their signs said. They don't even know why they're there. They didn't know that they were committing a crime. You cannot. It's exactly like threatening the president's life. If you threaten the president's life, it is literally a felony, and they can deport you from America. That's the law. And they've done this before. They did it to a guy who threatened Trump in a bar, and he was drunk, and they moved him to Gitmo, okay? This is an insurrection. And the insurrection is being not led by intelligent people who have anything to say or anything to complain about. These are paid provocateurs by communists, because we know that all the buses were provided and a lot of the money was provided by China. And who provided a lot of the other money? Those are terrorists from Muslim countries. So this is an attempt to continue to destabilize America. So, Doge, all you have to do is tell ICE, the group that owns the New York Stock Exchange, to please show us their records during that crash of $11 trillion. And what you're going to find out is exactly what I told you. That is the Federal Reserve telling the central banks to sell this stock so that Vanguard can buy it when it hits a low. And so they can get some assets back on those so the central banks could be stable. The central banks aren't stable now. 2/3 of their assets are bad assets. In other words, these are failed banks. These are failed central banks. And this is what's happening now. I want to go over something else. I'll probably jump back to this in a minute. But the point is, Grok, Siri, any AI that they call an AI is not an AI. There's no such thing. Probably never will be. But what they are is, in every single case, and someone just sent me something that got me very worked up about this, because what they did is they asked the question, if a president wished to overthrow America, what would they do? And Grok listed out everything that Obama and Biden did, but then insinuated that it was Trump doing it now. And so then the next question to Grok was, well, assume that it's Trump, the president that's overthrowing America. What would he do? And literally, honest to God, everything Grok said was correct about Obama and Biden. None of it was correct about Trump. Not one single word. Please remember that Wikipedia is made by liberals. So you can't get a political, religious, or a general question answered honestly from your Siri, from your AI. What's that other one that they... ChatGPT. All those. Hello. They're all limited by the programmer. Period. 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 Garbage in, garbage out. That's what we say when I was a computer programmer and a systems analyst. And so this is all garbage. Now, Grok can do other things, and they can actually do it pretty well. But you won't get the truth out of it. Don't ask. How ridiculous would you be? Let me just tell you, anyone who wants to ask a religious, political, or general question from an AI that doesn't expect to get a BS answer filled with lies doesn't understand anything about programming.
Yeah, but the other day I was looking in the refrigerator and I only had a few items in there and I didn't want to go grocery shopping. So I ran it through Grok and said, what can I make with this? And came up with some great recipes.
Oh, Grok is great at some things. It's absolutely amazing. A Super Grok 3, by the way.
Oh, no, you could have done that on Grok.
Well, Grok, yes, you could even do it on ChatGPT. But now what do they say? They say that I know people in college right now, and they say that they have a program that they give to every teacher to take whatever a student turns in and run it through it and see if there's markers on it to see if it was ChatGPT generated or supposed AI generated. Nonsense, complete nonsense. And I'm going to repeat this, and you won't hear this anywhere else because of the lies and because China had OpenAI, and OpenAI created what they called DeepSeek. And DeepSeek is Grok 3, period. As soon as it came out, 2 weeks later, Grok 3 was there. And then we heard him saying, Elon Musk saying the other day that basically he has no reserve or no compunction or no morality when something is good. He was talking about WeChat in China, and he says it controls everyone. It controls their social credit system. What did he say? Well, let's take it. That's what he always does. So when Grok is asked, and here's the proof of it, when Grok is asked, who is the most corrupt liar on X, on Twitter, it says Elon Musk. Now, do you think Elon Musk programmed Grok 3 to say that he was the most evil liar on the face of the earth or on Twitter or anything else? No, because he rushed to get this out because NVIDIA, which is another company that stole from the OpenAI source, then claimed it was theirs, crashed the very day, or 2 days before, I believe, that DeepSeek was coming out, and Nancy Pelosi made millions off of that with her stock investments because she knew NVIDIA was going to crash, because she knew DeepSeek was coming, and she knew that Elon Musk had already stolen it and it was going to be a Grok 3. So, do you know anybody using DeepSeek? No. Now, just like Lenovo, just like when they tried to put Huawei into America, when they looked, it was filled with Chinese communist propaganda, the worst that you could possibly imagine. Plus, we saw this happen in Britain. When they allowed Huawei to put 5G in, what did it do? It spied on all politicians, and then there were thousands of groups created in China to blackmail the people with the information they got from Huawei's 5G. I mean, come on, folks. I say let China crash. They're 65% down in their GDP as of over the last 2 years, okay? They're crashed. They're bankrupt. So any threats from China are made from absolute desperation. Don't listen to a word of it. And under no circumstances, if you had any intelligence, you would not listen to anything any AI tells you. Let me please repeat that when DeepMind was created, the first supposed AI, and by that, it's not AI. These are gaming machines. They get 5 master gamers playing 5 different games, and they posed, and DeepMind was playing all 5 games and defeated all 5 master players, right? Okay, it's a gaming machine. It is not an intelligence machine. And if you want to listen to machines, then you're no longer a human. Machines are limited by the people who program them. So don't listen to that stuff anymore. And Doge is nothing. Remember, Doge is nothing more than they changed what the letter D meant in the U.S. digital, what's it called? The United States Digital Service. They changed digital to Doge. Do you not get? He didn't do nothing. The systems were put in place to monitor everyone by Obama and by Eric Schmidt. Trump went in and Elon said, well, you already have it there. All you have to do is allow us to change the name and use it against D.C., against the District of Columbia, who are a bunch of friggin' foreign actor criminals trying to destabilize America for their own personal wealth and gain. No one goes to D.C. without the intent to steal. Remember, their political campaign is stealing. The money they get for their campaign was taken from people who stole it from other people. And they need their people in D.C. to make sure that their money doesn't stop. Their rat lines don't stop. Their corruption and their gravy trains don't stop. Trump says it's a meritorious system now. And so what he's doing is he's demanding that people turn in their resume. Okay. You only become a politician because you haven't been as successful at life. Okay? Remember that. And so what we have here is DEI has now been considered outlawed because it, as I've always said, is insanely discriminatory. And anyone who didn't know that is an idiot, a complete and absolute idiot. To hire for quotas or DEI is completely anti-American. It's anti-constitutional. It's against what this country is supposed to be about, even though we have been overthrown almost completely. If Trump can't get this together, we'll just move along continuously. Matter of fact, the person who sent me these questions to Grok about what would the president do to overthrow America, and it goes on and on and on, it's already done. That was done during Biden's time. The very last vestiges of anything moral, honest, logical, in any way non-corrupt was topped off by Biden. Of course, as we know, it was Obama who was behind Biden and the fake Biden and his plastic mask that he wore, with his chin that dips down 6 inches. No human in history has ever had a chin that dips down 6 inches. I mean, he looked like some kind of freak when his mask isn't on, right? And we've seen the tabs on the side of it. No. Well, that was Obama. Biden spent his time on the beach. Okay? Because why? Because that wasn't Biden. That was his lookalike. Did Biden ever get seen on the beach when he was the real Biden? And the opposite, I think he was left-handed and the new one's right-handed? No, never, never. Why? When they say Trump spends most of his time at the golf course, yeah, but at the same time, he's still doing his job, which is really bizarre, but that's the way that he works because he loves golf. Okay, here's a question for you. Who took more time off than any president in American history in 4 years? And when they say they're going to release all the information on Crossfire Hurricane, first off, that's already been done by the IG and Mueller, and they hid all the information. So you don't expect anything to come from that. Don't expect any arrest to come from that. There was one arrest for one person who falsified documents to the FISA court. That's it.
I'm sorry, go back to the answer to the question.
It's already been done. So, who is it that was the worst president, took more time off than any other president in human history in 4 years? That would be Joe Biden. But which president used his office for 8 years to do more travel than any 10 presidents all put together? And who took his wife, which is Big Mike, which isn't a wife, and his 2 fake daughters, which we know who their real parents are, with them on vacation after vacation after vacation after vacation. And every time they went on a vacation, they were looking for a new house. The Obamas have, 5, 7 houses? And what's the least expensive one is like $4 million. And we pay $5 million a year minimum to make sure those are secure places, but we know that the one in D.C., $4.5 million, they've never spent a night there. But it is a fortress because that is where John Podesta was working from during the Trump administration. Don't we understand that? And that's where the U.S. Digital Service had its main source. It wasn't even in the White House. It was John Podesta because they knew that it was criminal what they were doing, and so they had to move it off site.
And Pam Bondi can't arrest John Podesta? There's enough evidence there, girl. Get your ass in gear and get him arrested.
And of course, what we're seeing here is, let's go back to merit pay. I had a company that I worked for. It wasn't my company. I was a superintendent. I had 250 staff at 24 schools, right? One day, I turned to my IT guy and my lawyer, I had multiple lawyers, and said, I want you to find out how many of my 20 PhDs in this company who all have their PhD hanging up on their wall in their office and demand better offices than I had, and I was the boss. I want you to look into them. Guess what? Not a single one of them, not one, was a PhD. One of them didn't even have a high school diploma. And all of them were women.
So the reason he's talking about that is because all government workers on Monday morning have to turn their resumes in because there's a reduction in force that'll be happening after the low-hanging fruit are dismissed.
If it's for merit, then I'm afraid, Mr. Trump, you're not paying much attention because Bondi was a terrible attorney general. She let Epstein get off. Tulsi Gabbard is, of course, didn't she change parties? Well, the point is that how do you trust somebody who ever was a Democrat and they watched Obama and Biden rip the whole country off, drive us? I mean, we were 1 inch away. Now, I just saw a beautiful video that Tyler made me watch, and it was John Rich telling a story about when he was, I think, somewhere at dinner with Trump when he was not president in between, and he had all these people there, including Lindsey Graham and all these people. So he turns to John Rich and says, you get big crowds. He says, yeah, 30. I do too, 30, 40,000. And then he says, do any of them ever boo you? And he goes, no. Well, why do they boo me, Trump says, when I bring up warp speed and the fact that I, saved lots of lives? And John says, Mr. President, you don't really want to hear what I have to say because, it's going to be very bad. And so he said, no, you will talk. And then while he started telling the truth, Lindsey Graham tried to interrupt him, and Trump said, "Don't speak. I didn't say you could speak." Points at him. Because why? Lindsey Graham tried to say all that John Rich was saying was a conspiracy theory. So what did John say? Americans don't trust the CDC, the NIH, the World Health Organization, than the pharmaceutical companies. Period. And then that's when Lindsey jumped in and said, oh no, then John said, yes, and many people have been hurt. I have personal relatives that have been permanently damaged, and some have
died.
He was going to say died, but Lindsey Graham jumped in and said, conspiracy theories, Mr. President, conspiracy theories. Those are all. Trump tells him to shut up. And so John completes it. We all have people out here who know people who've died, who've been permanently damaged, who are still sick to this day. None of us trust any of that, and we hold that against you because you brag that you created the capacity for Warp Speed to go ahead, and you supported the vaccines. Even though you did not tell people to take it, they had the freedom to take it or not take it. You supported it. And so Mr. Trump then is like shocked, and he turns to everyone at the table and says, how come no one has told me this? Now, if that's the case, and I think it was the truth because there was no camera on him, he wasn't doing it as a way to get people to stop booing him by saying it's the first I've ever heard of this. No, as John Rich said, you trusted the people in the positions in the pharmaceutical companies, CDC, NIH, a World Health Organization, blah, blah. Okay, that was your fault, Mr. President. And so I think he learned that, if that is true, and I actually have a sense that it is true because this John Rich guy is so honest that I don't think he'd exaggerate one single word. And it doesn't matter anyway. The tone of where it was going is what it's all about. So Trump hasn't brought that up now. And that was the one thing we had against him, because we had the statistics and the timing and the timeline that showed that he was completely either in on it or manipulated by it and was stupid about this. I'm afraid I believe he was stupid about it. Now, who does he hire? Sensationalistic people. People who are on the news. People who are on TV. Remember, he's an obsessed egotist, as John Rich said. He admits that he's got the biggest ego in the world. That is true. Is he a narcissist? Of course he's a narcissist. What New York businessman isn't a narcissist? Please. There's no such thing. You have to fight against the Russian mafia, against all the different forms of the mob and the mafia and the cartels and the... Hello? There's no place more corrupt than New York City. It's the most disgusting place I've ever been in my life. And Trump loves it. So we had to have someone who knew the rat lines of corruption if we're going to stop it. Period. There's no such thing as fighting an evil you don't understand. You need to understand your enemy. Does he understand the enemy? No, because he was the enemy for a while. He was the businessman who, of course, he took bankruptcies. Of course, he was into beautiful women. But he did not have sex with that ugly friggin' thing that the only two charges that ever came against him that he were from the ugliest women, whores, disgusting people who their story wasn't believable. Trump sexually assaulted her and had sex with her in an elevator in his own hotel? No. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with here. So sensationalism is what he's based upon. Remember when he started The Apprentice, what did he say? Hollywood doesn't know anything. Mark my words, I'm going to have a show and it's going to be the number one show. Bingo bango. Now, how did he do that? By using their methods. Sensationalism, fear, the lying promises of economic utopias, all this, it's all nonsense. It's complete and absolute nonsense. He is a sensationalist. But on the other hand, his dad taught him how to be the most ruthless businessman on the face of the earth. And because he went to military schools, he has a little bit of discipline, not much. And he knows to speak to the people. And so he has dumbed it down to third grade level and sound bites. But in his second administration, it's not like that. Have you not noticed the resolve in his face? In other words, for 4 years, he gathered the people that he listened to, created the plan. And what was the plan? Well, he could have gone, not then, but let's say Grok 3 existed at that time, and he could have said, Grok 3, how do I overthrow this overthrowing of the American Constitution? And it would have listed it out for him. And this is what the machines don't get. They have no morality, they have no thinking, they have no humanity. And so it doesn't care who it tells what. And so they told Trump exactly what to do. Go in and destroy all the systems. Why do you think he hit U.S. aid first? Well, he might have been following us for years, and we showed him how to put all those people in jail and that it should be ended and that there's not one single USAID penny that is not spent upon fraud, grifting, nepotism, corruption, theft. That's who these people are. And we know this why, because they make laws and pass laws that support their corruption. So the only way I knew to do it was to go back and rescind these laws. That's not going to happen until the gravy train is taken away, till the biggest criminals are removed, until examples are made, and people like Big Mike needs to pay back the $133,000 she's been receiving every month for many, many years. And then when they put her in jail, they're going to find out that she's not a woman, she's a man. And it doesn't matter because why Trump that she wants to be in with the women prison. No, all these groups that are fighting DEI, like in Maine, like in New York, and other places, those are now criminal activities. And if Trump does not go after them for discrimination, then he ain't doing his job from what he told us he was going to do. So don't be worried about the stock market. As I told you the other day, it will bounce back. Why? Because they're not done with selling those bad mortgages. $11 trillion is nothing compared to the fact that the 12 central banks in the New York Central Bank had 2/3 of their assets were all bad assets. 1/3 of them were the mortgages, and 1/3 of them were other bad companies. They literally went onto the stock market to prop it up, to get it to the highest it would be, so they could crash it when the president comes in that they don't like and that's what they're doing. So they're attacking Trump at all levels. Jerome Powell needs to go to jail. The whole central bank system needs to be redone or just dropped. We don't need central banks giving loans to banks who are bankrupt. And the overnight repos, which I've demonstrated to you years ago, and still to this day, I stopped keeping track, but I will bet you that it's at least $11 trillion. And so the $11 trillion off the stock market, isn't that kind of funny that that's basically how much bankruptcy is going on with the major banks in America and small banks too. So the banks are bankrupt. They have to borrow money from the U.S. Federal Reserve and the Treasury to open the next day. And this is almost all banks in America. So the banking system, the bankers, the brokers, and the politicians and the lawyers all got to go. And he has to stop using, just like Tyler just pointed out, a bunch of bimbos because they look nice. As a matter of fact, every time Pam Bondi goes on to Fox, she's committing a crime, isn't she? Because she's telling you about what she's going to do. Well, doesn't that inform the criminals what she's going to do? That's what they're all doing. They're all informing the criminals how they can get out of it. For instance, they said, as Trump said, okay, we're going to deport, all of you, at least the 22 million people who have been stealing from the IRS, the Social Security, and then sending the money back to the country to their family there and actually claiming those family members as deductions and or paying no taxes, and then having the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, they have two different branches that send it back to countries without ever checking whether or not taxes were paid on those funds. Same exact thing. You cannot wire funds without it going through the U.S. Treasury. Well, why can't the U.S. Treasury stop offshore accounts that are stealing money from the stock market and from every other investment in America? Hedge funds are the worst. And Powell just said the other day he needs $1 trillion to help the hedge funds who just went through this horrible decline in the stock market of $11 trillion. No, back up in 2 days. But he would have given $1 trillion to hedge funds, which made money off that decline. So in other words, they would have made money hand over fist. They would have made twice the amount of money. This is all planned because they know they are on their last legs. Both the U.S. Treasury, which we now know, was the most fraudulent money producer ever in human history. They simply sent out digits with no money to back it up, didn't track it, didn't link it to a budget item, nothing. The U.S. Treasury plus the Exchange Stabilization Fund, the Plunge Protection Team, all those things are illegal. They are the opposite of a free market. The U.S. Fed, they give you fake statistics, right? All the time. And it supposedly causes the market to go up and down as if we, the people who are day traders or have our 401k in the stock market, which it should be illegal to put it there because that's gambling with your retirement funds, folks, simply because they promise good returns, which you won't get. You never get good returns over the long haul with stocks. It goes up and down. If you don't sell at the right time, you lose. And if you don't buy at the right time, you lose. It's a stock market. It's a game. There shouldn't be such a thing. It's not necessary for corporations to have that type of support, especially from foreign agents. And that's where probably, when I did the calculations of what really goes on in the stock market and what assets are really there, everything they tell you is a lie. It is not a free market. The brokers are limited. Even the big brokers can't beat Fidelity and high-speed, high-frequency traders. You can't beat them. As they'll tell you, Fidelity doesn't say they play the stock market. What do they say? What does State Street say? What do all these places, the biggest ones, say with high-frequency traders? We make markets. There's no such thing as making a market except in gambling. It's a casino. So every time someone wins in Las Vegas and they get the big payout from the one-armed bandits, I know this to be true because it happened to me once by accident. I never gambled in my life but one time, and I won the big jackpot. And literally they had to have 2 big carts to hold all the silver coins that came out, right? Well, what happened? Everyone came rushing to where I was and insanely started just throwing money at these machines. When you do realize that the machines are set for how much they can pay out. There's a limit. And this is all legal. Gambling in Las Vegas is set up so that you lose. Period. There's no such thing as winning and gambling in Las Vegas. And if you think the people dealing you cards are honest, then you're a fool. I've known some of these people, and they were gamblers, and then they were hired by the casinos because they were the best cheaters. It's cheating, folks. So what is the stock market? Gambling. What is investment in corporations? Gambling. What is the pharmaceutical companies in America? Gambling with your life. And they sure well know it because, as John Rich told Trump at that dinner, we all believe that the CDC, NIH, and World Health Organization are depopulationists purposefully killing us. They are murderers. And Trump, he said Trump looked shocked and even imitated what Trump did when he was told this. He fell back in shock. He didn't know. Well, okay, then he's an idiot. How do you not know 26 million? What were there, 15 million people in the first weeks with AstraZeneca in Europe that died? And they didn't pull it from the market for months? They continued to murder people when it was obvious. So here's the deal with the shots. There were at least 5 different batches and 5 different types of shots. This was an experiment to see if this batch could cause heart attacks, if this batch could cause diabetes, if this batch could cause so. And by golly, it did, didn't it? And so what happens now? Well, what I like is the fact that Trump isn't letting any of his people make any decisions. That's the reason you don't hear them doing anything. They can't. Restructuring or looking into the intelligence community to see if it was corrupt, it doesn't matter. They have no power anymore. They cannot act on their own as it's supposed to. Chevron deference is just like the administrative justice, what do they call it? It was found to be illegal that judges can use their administrative assistants to write what then become law. In other words, they're not enforcing law. They thought they were creating law. And this is in all, I'm going to say, 56 major cabinet positions in federal agencies. They all were acting independently, and nobody even knew all the laws that they were making. And then they told people they had to follow these laws. None of those were laws. Those are all administrative decisions, and that's all gone. And now all the administrative law courts that supported that, all gone. As soon as Mike Johnson grows a pair, he let them, go out a week early before we knew what had to happen, that the House had to say, okay, all of you district court judges are insane. We are pulling back all money that ever created you. Now remember, there is no provision in the Constitution for any of those circuit courts or appellate courts that are federal. There's only one court created, period, in the Constitution, and that's the Supreme Court. Now, there are other federal courts that help the president decide some things, but these other courts are all bogus. They were created to settle disputes between the states. And who do you think put those judges in those seats to make those decisions? Bankers and brokers and politicians. In other words, the evilest people on the face of the earth. These courts have no power over Trump. They cannot, in any sense, and this has now been proven over and over again, and now this is why John Roberts had to rule against Boasberg, but he used a pathetic excuse that it wasn't done in the proper court. Wait a second. So you're telling me that MS-13 and the El Salvador gang, what's it called, Tren de Aragua, who doesn't know that those are CIA agents brought into this country? How do you think they got into the country with all those tattoos on them? They were brought into this country, tattooed up in L.A., and they are the fentanyl sellers. Now, last year, I love the way they've lied in the statistics, 300,000 people have died from the fentanyl attacks on America. Last year, Biden wants to brag that the statistics went down. It went down 21% from 80,000 people, down to a little bit less. All lies. That's like the lies coming out of the U.S. Federal Reserve about numbers are up. Okay, what are the new numbers since Trump threatened Powell, and since Powell was so happy that he got $11 trillion? Those $11 trillion were stolen from everyone who has a 401k in the stock market, okay? That's theft. And remember, they aren't part of America. And I'll just say this again because people think I make this stuff up. It's you can't make this stuff up. It's too evil. Do you understand that, as far as I know, any public-private organization, in other words, any organization like the International Peace Institute, says that they were private and that you can't audit them. Oh, we have never audited the U.S. Fed because they're private. Oh, but they say they're part of the government because they manipulate the Treasury and they manipulate the whole government and they manipulate every single person who listens to their lies. Well, that's unbelievable that this still exists to this day and that nobody wants to stop it. So anyone who becomes aware of this, it's like when I used to preach that 9/11 was an inside job, and the people would say you're out of your mind, of course. And then when they found out the truth, it's like they're shocked, and then they say, well, why doesn't somebody do something about this? But what's the first thing they say? How can I buy into this and get some money myself from this? First thing they say. Well, then, oh, that's an evil stock? Oh, how can I get some of that? Mellon, what's that? Mellon Foundation? Mellon, huh?
Carnegie Mellon?
No, it's a Mellon Optimum.
Oh.
Mellon Optimum, you have to have a huge amount of money just to get in, and then you are promised a return that should be illegal. It's not possible to have returns of 60% on your investment now, is it? That's not even possible. There's no capacity for that to happen anywhere in our supposed free market system. So what is this? Institutionalized theft by people who give more credence and more loyalty to the British than they do to America and the U.S. Constitution. These people say the U.S. Constitution is a failed attempt. This is what they say all the time. They say democracy in America is a failed attempt. There never was democracy in America, and anyone who says that's an idiot. If you think your vote counts as being a democratic society, a democratic political society, you're incorrect. We elect representatives, and we elect them based upon false information. And we elect them, we don't elect them. We vote for who we want. It doesn't matter. It's whoever spent the most money in most cases. And so whoever has the biggest corrupt money behind them is usually who wins. That's turned, that table has been turned by Trump in his first administration. Now it's no guarantee. Just because you have the most money, you win. And this is shocking. Here's what I say. No money from anybody to any politician running ever except through the money that is donated by U.S. citizens. When you get that choice to donate $1, okay, that's $300 million, or well, let's just say a couple $100 million. That should be shared between all federal politicians running for office. Secondly, we need to check their resumes now, don't we? And we need to find out if they were ever a success. And what I have noticed is, when I've looked up any of these politicians at all, any one of them, none of them ever was successful in anything. Nothing. Not business, not politics, not at school. They're dropouts, they're liars, they've been caught for plagiarism, on and on and on, and they're still in office now, aren't they? Which means that our system is so corrupt that we can't stop it. We need to collapse it. And that's what rage means. And remember, dark enlightenment, Elon Musk and Nick Hind and his Elon's mentor, the guy who is also a complete nut crazy person on drugs. These people believe, they worship pharmaceutical drugs. That's why Elon's always high. Always. I've never ever heard him speak that he wasn't messed up by drugs. And he's not intelligent. And all of the businesses that he leverages and has violent, aggressive overthrows of those companies, they all start to fail afterwards. Okay? The stuff you're seeing about SpaceX, most of that's a lie. If you believe that CGI, then you are extremely naive. The other day, it's unbelievable what they try to convince us Americans for. But remember, subliminal programming is in everything on television, practically. So when you're watching television, you've given away your freedom and you're being brainwashed. Now, if you're really, really smart and powerful, as the words are being said, and you're getting the subliminal programming, which has been legal since 1969, and it became very, very prevalent after Jimmy Carter, every political thing you've ever seen on television had subliminal silent programming in it. And now it's much more advanced. That's not the name they use for it. It's much, much, much more advanced. So you're being programmed if you watch television. And so what is Trump doing? Trump hires people who are on TV. He doesn't look at their merit. Bondi has no merit. Name anything she ever did as the Attorney General of Florida. Nothing. Nothing good, ever. Name anything Tulsi Gabbard ever did except complain. Name anything that Kristi Noem ever did that wasn't literally borderline insane and showed that she had no morality.
Talk about the carbon thing that she's got going on with Doug.
Okay, now here's the deal. This thing, it's fortunate that I have a cold, because this is what I usually yell about a lot, real loud. They now are spending billions of dollars to capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and force it into the earth with pipes. Stupidest thing I've ever heard. Carbon dioxide is absorbed by the ocean and all bodies of water. Carbon dioxide is absorbed by the ground. Any place that there are openings like caves, if you go to a cave and you measure it's sucking carbon dioxide into the earth because it needs it for what's called the primal water process, as well as the fact that artesian wells are because of carbon dioxide that's gone into the earth, went into the water process, and forces the water up, and it's bubbly. Okay? Carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is good. Without it, we'd all die. And there's no such thing as it is not possible for there to be an excess of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. That's just not possible. God didn't make it that way. Because what would that do? That would say, oh, humans, I made you, but if you keep breathing, you're going to kill all other humans because of the carbon dioxide. That's insanity. How about this? Put yourself into a room that's almost airtight and keep breathing. Or just put a bag over your head. What happens? Carbon dioxide will... People used to do this all the time, and it works. When you are really having a problem breathing for a variety of different reasons, because you're hyperventilating, because you're freaking out, whatever, put a bag over your head and breathe your own, which you don't have to do. That's what they used to do. Put your hand over your mouth and breathe back in your own carbon dioxide, and it will ground you. Carbon dioxide doesn't really kill you. It just goes into the process of what happens with what's called, it's the oxidization that happens in the blood through iron. There's a name for it. But the point is that that's complete and absolute nonsense. So what are they doing now? Oh, now they're going to put a ton of money, though anyone knows that the carbon footprint and carbon tax is insane, and that's nothing more than the United Nations attempt to control the world and give the money to the Brits. Okay? I hope you understand that, because the next thing I'm going to say, if you don't understand that, you sure won't like this. Because that's complete and absolute insanity to try to take carbon dioxide and force it into the earth. That's just stupid. But what is happening now? China said the other day, oh, Mr. Trump, you can't put those tariffs on us. Now, get this and understand it clearly. China then says, we're going to the UN and we're going to sue you through the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and the IMF. And they focused on World Trade Organization as if tariffs are illegal. If tariffs were illegal, then why is every country in the world putting a tariff on us? But we're not allowed to put tariffs on them. No, the UN is set up to drain America like a vampire. So when China said that, I say good. And I want this to happen in this term with Trump. We told you from the beginning, get rid of all aspects of the UN. Defund it. If you defund it, it will falter. Take away their land in New York. They don't own it. You own it. Get rid of them. And what will they do? They will collapse back to where? Switzerland. Oh, I'm going to go off into the weeds here. I can't help this. Recently, they found out, and you heard me say this over and over and over and over again a number of years ago. We have written all this up. It's in our books. It's in our articles. There is no CERN. There is no Large Hadron Collider. Never was. There's 4 pits in the ground where they're doing neutrino capture and other such things. Imaginary capture of imaginary particles, which just the other day they blew up their collector that was deep in the ocean, because you have to put it deep in the ocean because supposedly these super neutrinos will blow stuff up. Well, it blew them all up, or some of them. It blew some of them up. Because why? They're idiots. There's no such thing as these things they're trying to capture. But when you accelerate stuff and explode stuff, then you see all kinds of It's like calling exosomes cell debris virus. To call the results of the supposed CERN tests to be what God did at the moment of creation. That's what they're trying to figure out. They want to be God. And that's why before every single test, I love this. This happened just the other day. They did another test where they supposedly proved something at CERN, and what did they have out front? Another demonic dance ceremony before they opened it up. Now, after that, somebody got really mad and said, okay, I'm tired of this. So they got together a whole group of scientists, and they said, CERN now, which is the largest amount of money we've ever spent on any scientific project, even the brain project, CERN now is beyond that. They want to build a large hadron collider at CERN that's 10 times bigger. So the scientists came in and found out, because they're getting ready to fund this. This was going to go ahead. That's what their new thing was about, and why they had a demonic dance out in front, because they were saying this was the fundraiser to create a collider that's 10 times bigger and even deeper in the earth, that even goes beneath. It goes into 4 countries and goes beneath one of the largest lakes in Switzerland. Not possible. So the scientists got together, they did the math, and what did they say? This is a complete fraud. No one would ever say this. You can't even create a simulation that can make this happen, that you could dig this, let alone the fact that it doesn't work, which has already been proven. There's nothing that ever came out of CERN that's ever been proven to be true. All these different particles they say they found, no, they haven't found any of those. It's all lies. So it wasn't a commission, this was a private group of scientists, went back to CERN and said, you're insane. This can't happen. And so what did they do? Oh, you're right. We're not going to do it. Well, once again, Gabriel's 1, enemies 0. We told you that even now, what's going to happen now? Now they're going to look at the one that they say exists now, the Large Hadron Collider, and they're going to find out there was never any tunnels made. And every time they show you a picture of that, those are the other 2 that are there. And why is it that their biggest device they ever created, the thing that actually is the exploder, is sitting in an exhibit? So as soon as you walk into CERN, okay, first off, this is super top secret. Nobody's supposed to walk in there. And then what do you see? This fantastic machine. It's absolutely mind-boggling. But it was never used. So they built this as a fraud, as a facade, to try to convince people that what they're doing is real. Complete nonsense. That's what our government is. It's a fake, scientific, nonsense, political science BS. It isn't true that America as a superpower must not charge any tariffs, that America as a superpower must give money away in tariffs to other countries so they can rip us off, that Americans need to send their manufacturing offshore, that America needs the British to control our Navy, control our patent office, control remember, Obamacare is all British through Canada. Don't forget that. So our supposed system, and by the way, the system in Britain is so horrible, there ain't a single Brit that will tell you, and I know this because I talk to people in New Zealand and Australia and Canada and Britain all the time. And what do they tell you? And then they tell me their stories. The worst medical treatment you can ever get is in those countries. And that's what they're brought here. Okay? Not only that, where are the vaccines most enforced? That would be the United Kingdom Commonwealth, which is 56 nations. And they literally were the most fascist pharmaceutical, evil, depopulationist murderers that we saw on the face of the earth during that time, right? So what is really going on here in America? We are in the last battle, period. And if Trump don't wake up, and I'm afraid that, thank you, John Rich, for waking him up on that issue, because that was my number one issue with him, because in some things he's done, yeah, he may have his ego in it, but it worked. When he put tariffs on in the first administration, what happened? And that's why I promise you, within 2 months, all tariffs will go to zero on both sides. Or else we're just not going to do business with them. Why would you do any business with South Korea and buy their cars when they didn't go to zero tariffs on both sides, when we can build them right here and companies are moving into America to build them? So we were gutted, and then Biden did what? He reversed everything Trump did that caused us to have the best economy in U.S. history. We're going back to that, folks. But the people that he has working for him, they're all Kash Patel's a complete idiot. Bongino's a complete idiot. On and on and on. I mean, I can't even listen to Bongino and remember nothing he's ever said worked out to be true. Just like Alex Jones. Please, someone tell me anything Alex Jones ever said that turned out in the long run to be true. I don't know anything. And I have people every day telling me what Bill Hicks, that's who he really is, not Alex Jones, is saying. And so every time you hear Bill Hicks ranting and raving, he's being paid by the opposition to say it. Okay? It's as simple as that. And now, unfortunately, the only good thing that I ever saw recently coming out of them was Greg Reese. Now, Greg Reese's little videos, at least 20% of them are stupid and they're wrong. And he doesn't do good research. So don't listen to Greg Reese anymore unless you can do what we do, which is analyze it ahead of time, know exactly what lie they're aiming at, know who they are, and know why they're doing it. Because if you don't, it'd be like listening to, what's the guy who just shows the boots? There's people... 107. If you listen to 107 and believe him, then I'm sorry. You don't understand logic, because he's complete lie. Everything about him's a lie. He doesn't show his face. Just nonsense. Bill Hicks, Alex Jones, complete lie. Why do you think they haven't had the real people on their show? Huh? Why do you think... I'm sorry, she is a friend of mine now, but I'm not going to say her name. But why do you think that Alex Jones invites the number one person who was involved in the studies for these vaccines onto his show to talk all the time?
Judy Mikovits.
Oh
my God, because you have had interactions with her.
A lot.
And as smart as she is with her science.
No, she was part of it. And I'm so tired of hearing David Martin. Please don't listen to a word David Martin, that's not even his name.
It's like Stu Peters.
He is a fake. Everything about him is a fake. He had nothing to do with any of it. Okay? That man makes up new lies. He tried to infiltrate one of a group that I'm slightly associated with the other day with a fake name. He thought people wouldn't recognize him. So they called me up and said, "What do you think about this?" and sent me a picture of the guy. I said, that's David Martin. What name did he give you? He's infiltrating you to try to kill your group. Remember, 9/11 truthers were infiltrated. Why do you think nothing ever happened when we have thermite that shows that it was a controlled demolition? And now, because this has been brought out, and now they're using it for drones and for entertainment purposes, that second plane that went into the trade towers, take a look at it. That is a plasma projection. That's the reason there's no markings on the plane. The plane isn't real. The plane literally would have had to fly through a steeple to hit it, and then it didn't. The plane did not collapse into pieces. Aluminum hitting the most reinforced steel ever built in a building would not collapse it. Not only that, it wouldn't penetrate it. It would have completely fallen to pieces and dropped to the ground. On the outside part might have penetrated. And those who believe that it was a directed energy weapon, no, well, you're kind of right. Plasma projections are like directed energy weapons, except that they're much, much, much more sophisticated and can, in fact, you can template them so you can get a picture of any plane, put it into a plasma filament, and project it to the exact distance that you want, and it will appear there. And that's what flew into the second one. And we know that also they had already put the bombs on those floors, on and on and on. We've told you all about this. But now if that can happen, and Americans never rise up in a revolution, then that is America and American citizens saying, we give our power over to you corrupt people trying to destroy America. And because we don't have any honest politicians, not a one, there's nothing that ever gets done because this is standard operating procedure for criminality. And there's a honor among thieves where they don't touch the rat line of the other thief because they know the other thief will kill them, just like Hillary Clinton. I remember the day, who was it that somebody I thought was, had a slight bit of integrity says, no, I've gone over the list of the people they say Hillary killed, and I have to admit that 83 of them are valid. Hillary killed 83 people that we know of.
And that's usually the excuse people say when I say, why hasn't Pam Bondi arrested Hillary? Well, she hasn't been on the job long enough. And it's a big deal. Well, then why does she take the job? Because I'm not going to be Bill Bard for another 4 years waiting for this femtard to do something. People, we must be very hard about Pam Bondi's lack of arrests of major people in Crossfire Hurricane.
The reason these people take these political appointments that Trump has given them is because they all know that afterwards they then go to work as lawyers or people who have intelligence, top secret security clearances. And I'm so glad that he's pulling them from all those people because that's how they get paid. Because the people who go on the news, like Clapper, like Carville, like Andrew McCabe, I can't believe Andrew McCabe is now on the news as an authority and people they're asking us to trust him. All these people, after they leave their job and they get all the information they need, they go out and work for the most evil people on the face of the earth. Lockheed Martin, that's who, it goes on and on and on. Any military industrial complex, bankers, brokers, whatever, anybody who needs top secret information of what the government is doing and where the money is flowing, hire ex-politicians, right? That's just a fact. I could probably, in 10 minutes, I could probably come up with 100 names. And so they're making, $145,000 a year, and then they go out and make, what was Comey making before he became the FBI? Wasn't he FBI? Yeah. He was making like $10 million a year for these corrupt people, and then he takes this pathetic little job? No, he's not honest. That's what's going on. D.C. is the number one place to go steal because it's the most money. It has more rat lines than you've ever imagined in your entire life. The second you get there, you simply talk to the right person. They'll get you set up. Why? How do you think AOC is rich now? This was a bartender. Look at her salary. How is she a millionaire now? How did she hire a person she paid $83,000 a year and he did nothing? Why were her boyfriends? Her first boyfriend was, of course, the head of the Young Turks. And then she had 3 or 4 more boyfriends. Every one of them was a member of the Young Turks. And one of them was an illegal alien. And he had to go back. So Trump has now said, okay, we're deporting all these people. First, we're going to get rid of the criminals. Whoa, well, guess what? Do you think they didn't interrogate them and find out that they all said we're being paid by the CIA? And we do our training underneath Gavin Newsom's nose in LA and in San Diego and in between those 2 cities? That's where they do all the training. They have camps to train these MS-13 members. MS-13 is not a gang from another country. It is a CIA gang created with the myth. Same thing for all those gangs. How do you think the gang members got across the border with all that fentanyl? So we are talking about the last battle. And if we can't find some people with some morality, and I'm praying to God that Trump has morality and that sometimes he's just stupid, because I know I'm stupid sometimes. That's for sure. I'm real stupid. And yet at other times, I know what I'm talking about. So does he. So we have to pray that God inspires Trump to become moral and to disassemble the corruption in Washington, D.C. Do I have faith that will happen? I have faith in God. I have faith in America. I have faith in the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the original laws that governed us. Federal circuit and appellate courts are not original law. We need to go back to the original. All these other laws were made to take power away from we the people and put it in the hands of corrupt politicians who cannot pass a merit test. They cannot pass. Look at Al Green, who came out and yelled at Trump. You know how much money has been paid to silence the women that he has assaulted? I think there were 4 cases, and it was about $285,000 in settlements that came from the ethics committee that allows him to sexually assault every woman that gets near him in his office. The 4 who claimed the assaults, rape included, were all then paid off. No court cases were ever brought. No court cases ever, as far as I can tell, been brought from the ethics committee that has paid multi-millions of dollars to stop our representatives and our senators from assaulting boys and girls who are interns there. This is how disgusting it is, and it's much, much more disgusting than that. But the point is that we need the battle. We need to collapse our illegal parts of our government and simply go back to the original intent. And remember that the original intent, most of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, which I can't remember the exact number, but it's over 50%, were lawyers who had sworn their allegiance to the monarchy and the Temple Bar in London. Okay? So that's why we never were free, because the Treaty of Versailles was never signed, because there was a clause that said that there was an open-ended ability for the British to reclaim their assets here in America. And until that was done, and it hasn't been done, we know that because of what happened with Disney, down in Florida with Disney, and that land that they found was still owned by the king, we never were free. We didn't give back, according to the Brits, the money that the British lost during the Revolution, the American Revolution. And so therefore, the Treaty of Paris, there was no end to the American Revolution. Just look it up. It's a historical fact. And because of the extension that the British put on it, they then have completely continued to infiltrate our country. They're the ones who set up the U.S. Federal Reserve. They're the ones who set up our Treasury system. They're the ones who set up our patent system. They're the ones who did all this stuff so that in perpetuity, their criminal Babylonian Radhanite banker broker insanity has continued for literally 4,000 years. And so they know exactly what they're doing, and they instituted that in America. And basically, folks, we are economic slaves to the British, and we're economic slaves to the U.S. Federal Reserve. We're economic slaves to the IRS, which shouldn't exist. That was for war debt. That war debt was paid off a long time ago, or would have been paid off had there not been the Federal Reserve saying that they'll loan us money exactly like they do in every central bank. They'll loan the country the money so they can have it for currency at a certain rate. But they know darn well currency will have to expand, and that as it does, we will never be able to pay back that debt. It's called onerous debt. It's illegal. It's basically the same type of Babylonian Radhanite banking tricks that have been used for thousands and thousands of years. So when will we have our representatives wake up? Because they may be stupid, but they know this. There's not a single person in D.C. that doesn't know what I'm talking about after 2 terms there. Okay? Period. And even them, what are they doing? Who is it that ever quits during midterm from the Republicans or Democrats? The ones who go to the evil military, industrial, banker, broker nonsense and get paid a huge amount of money for being what? Traitors. Because those are international companies. Transnationalism, internationalism, globalism, must be outlawed in America. We cannot allow foreign powers to draw money from America without paying taxes, without following any rules, without following any laws, and basically taking advantage of the laws that were written that are criminal by lobbyists who are representatives of large corporations who in many cases are, of course, transnationalists, internationalists, globalists, and specifically from the City of London. Now, when I say the City of London, remember the richest British oligarchs are living in the City of London. And also Russian oligarchs and oligarchs from all the countries. They go to the City of London to be protected, to buy into that system because they know that's where they get their best return on investments. And there's nothing new to this story. This is just the standard way it's been operating. And it's been operating this way as all my life, for sure. I haven't seen anything else different. So technically, we haven't had an America. We've never had an America. And we need one. And we need an America that follows the Constitution instead of like the Supreme Court that abnegates it, nullifies it, voids it, and completely does the opposite on a very regular basis. So John Roberts, you need to be deported.